Hello and welcome to Movie Mayhem. Today we're going to talk about Jackie Chan's 1994 Drunken Master 2, directed in part by Lau Kar-leung, and there was some drama on the set. They kind of got into a fight, and Jackie took over near the end to finish up the movie. So this was chosen because I watched it recently, and it really just resonated back with me how great of a film this is. And it's got some interesting history to it. Of course, Lau Kar-leung being legendary director. If you don't know who he is the old man that fights Jackie underneath the train. And of course, I highly recommend watching any of his older films where he's an actor or as a director. I've reviewed a couple of them on here as well. Great action choreography. What makes Drunken Master 2 very interesting in the history is that it's one of three films from Jackie, the other being Rumble in the Bronx and Police Story 4, First Strike, whatever the heck it's called, in the million different titles, where the original versions are nigh impossible to come by. The Weinstein Group purchased a lot of Hong Kong films, and I'll kind of diatribe a little bit into this. I love it for the exposure that it gave to the actors and the directors. I hate it for what it did in the grand scheme of Hong Kong cinema. Now, we can blame some of that on the Weinsteins and some of it on, of course, the collapse of Hong Kong as an independent nation. Hong Kong film really drastically changed with the mass exodus of talent from the country, as well as the introduction of government censors. I mean, you can just watch Hong Kong films post that 90. There were still films being released through 97, 98, but right about then you can see where it just dramatically changes the landscape of film. I'm glad the talent got recognized. I mean, it's fantastic that Jackie, Jet Li, Donnie Yen now, that they have recognition outside of the Asian territories or European territories, as well as the directors, but their work is very different. John Woo especially. We'll talk more maybe about the whole history of that in a different thing. And I think this film, which didn't get released in the US until I think around, I want to say 2000, it just blew me away when it came out because there were still a lot of wire fu movies, and of course we have all the classics, but this was pretty much a almost non-wire film that the choreography was just absolutely amazing. Now, if you're interested in the original version is you can get a version of it on DVD. The DVD version is the first pressing, I think it's Thackrell put it out, and they cropped it, but at least it's the original pressing. You'll notice it if you find an original version, the picture quality is going to be very so-so, but it'll have burned in Chinese and English subtitles on the video print itself. These were taken from the original Laserdisc because the only uncut version is the version taken from the Laserdisc. They didn't actually remaster it for DVD. So if you can find that, I do recommend it. It's got some, the music sound effects are completely different than what you've seen in any of the other releases. And of course, it has the original ending, which is a bit goofy, but it works in the context of the film. This was, if we don't count the redubbing and the changing of the sound effects and the changing of some of the meaning of the dialogue, which the Weinsteins really, honestly, I'm not a fan of their butchery of what they do to films when they get them. And somehow, like the case with this film, they bought the rights in every country on the planet. So it's not like I can just go buy the Japanese version of the Blu-ray and get an uncut version like you can with First Strike and Rumble in the Bronx. But they have the rights everywhere. Even the Chinese release DVD is in English with Chinese subtitles. I'm not kidding. I find that very weird. You can't get the original audio tracks even in China. I think there's a really interesting history to this film. And I will say this is one of my all-time favorite martial arts films. So we're not talking, not wuxia or magic or just, like a cop movie with some kung fu. This is a true kung fu film. Um, Jackie is his acting in it is absolutely great. He balances that perfect line between a serious film and having comedy in it. And I think it works really well in Drunken Master 2 because mostly Anita Mui is portraying the comedy. And it, however, the magic they created when they made this film came together so perfectly that the jokes never take away from the action, and it almost adds just a touch of lightheartedness, and not full on silly like Jackie can be, but just a touch of lightheartedness to not make the film grimdark, or as it were, and to very much distinguish it from the like Once Upon a Time in China series, which while they had wire food, they were much more serious, very very serious films, and this was again Wong Fei-hung story as well, but Jackie's take on it. So what do we have here? I think again, I think this is a good film to introduce if you have someone who maybe doesn't want to watch kung fu films, especially old ones. I think this is a nice cheat in because you're going to be able to say, "Oh, Jackie Chan's in this." That'll warm them up to it. But this still has your classic set pieces. You got the initial beginning with the under the train fight, which has got some great pole work and just the physicality of how they pulled off the low crouching fight scenes is really a beauty to behold. And you've got some other good comedy sequences where Jackie's fighting the band of thugs with his mother. That's got your traditional Jackie comedy. But then we get to the Weihei Axe Gang scene where they all attack with their it's like 100-something guys attacking, and Jackie fends them off in a restaurant. It's got an amazing oil scene where he's fighting with the giant bamboo staff. The choreography of this movie is just, it really is phenomenal. There's so many large group scenes and so much intricate combat sequences in the film that the beauty of it can usually be noticed by someone who's not even a fan of kung fu, just saying, wow, how did they do that? And when you compare that now to the fight scenes we've had in films in the past 20 years, it's just not something you're ever going to see anymore. The closest you'll get is something like Donnie Yen's modern films, but they're never on this scale. The scale of this film really sets it apart. And then, of course, we would be remiss not to talk about the final action scene where Jackie fights Kin Lo, his bodyguard. If you've seen the film or if you've seen trailers, he's the crazy kicking guy, which, I mean, watching that scene alone is just mind-blowing. It took, from what I understand, approximately 6 months to complete that whole scene start to finish. Now, there's a couple set pieces, but again, Jackie really wanted this to be his grand finale of the Kung Fu film. And he had said when he made it, he wanted this to be the final stamp. Like, hey, this is the best that I'm going to make in Kung Fu, and I want this to be my signature film. And he definitely pulled it off. But that scene, of course, he got burned because the real hot coals set his hair on fire too, which you'll notice in scenes where his hair changes length. So, I mean, of course, it's still Jackie being Jackie. But the way the fight scene progresses, the narrative that the fight scene pulls you into with that emotion. It's not just a raw fight scene. This is something where it's actually pushing the story. And I've noticed when I watch it with other people, they get into that, even if they're not fight scene people. And I bring this up because Jet Li had said in an interview where in American cinema, the fight scenes are about who's going to win. And then in Chinese cinema, it's more about the beauty of the art. And pretty much he's right. And that's why you'll notice in most Western films, a fight scene is pretty 1-2, bam, done. And you don't get these long, drawn out, the beauty of the choreography of the fight scene. It's more action, action, action. Who won the fight? And this is a film that really sets that apart and distinguishes the beauty of what can be a fight scene. I mean, it's watching a martial arts ballet, and this has been orchestrated to tell the story. So I guess I haven't really talked much about the story. The story is it's Wong Fei-hung, and how he's going to be the hero. Basically, the British are stealing Chinese artifacts, and they're stealing the cultural heritage of China, and they want to prevent that. So it's not a super deep story, but it works because it plays on a lot of things like, treasuring your culture, being true to who you are. And, this is Wong Fei-hung's journey in the film from being slightly irresponsible and not respected by his father to transforming to being, a leader of these people who want to stop the British stealing that and being truly respected by his father. And I think that adds a nice element and a teaching moment, as it were, of the film. I mean, you've got the costumes are fantastic. This is a film I really can't recommend enough. I used to have this on VHS, and I watched it. The VHS was actually a bootleg of the Laserdisc. At the time, of course, Laserdiscs were only out of Hong Kong, were issued in PAL. And unless you had a expensive conversion system, you couldn't watch them anyway. So there's no point to even import them unless you did that. So I had a bootleg videotape until I could get a DVD. I burned out the videotape to the point the last time I watched it, it was just smears of colors across the screen from the oxidization. And of course, if you get the version Legend of the Drunken Master, it's really pretty and looks good, but you're going to have to deal with the dub. Now, that may not matter to some. I found the acting very well. Of course, we know Chinese cinema, almost all of them were dubbed anyway, but I felt the performances were very good in this film from an acting perspective. So I've never been able to get the dub in this, whereas I could get into the dubs in especially stuff, even, like Dragons Forever, Wheels on Meals. The dubs really don't bother me in those movies because they kind of work with it. I always prefer watching the Chinese version, usually in Cantonese, with the rare exception where they were originally filmed in Mandarin. But I always like the original languages just because you're usually getting the original actor or their permanent voiceover artist. So you get that better feel, right? You get who they are. So I think this is, again, this to me is the film you introduce people to if you want to get them into Kung Fu films. You watch some of the older films, no matter how good they are, like A Snake and Eagle's Shadow. Brilliant film. Absolutely amazing choreography. But if you're not really into the martial arts, the film may not work on that level, whereas this does. And it really will blow most people away that haven't seen real physical stunts, which they don't exist much anymore. Most of your fight scenes are done by people who get, a week crash course of training, and then the editor does the 1 second, 1 second, 1 second cut, and you see nothing. Point being, watch a War with Statham and Jet Li, where the editing of that movie was absolutely horrendous. It was cut like you had two people who couldn't do any fight scenes rather than, two people who had worked with great choreographers in Jet's case, forever. And in Jason's case, he'd worked with Corey Yin several times, who's a very good choreographer. And so that was kind of a lost opportunity. But again, this is more about Drunken Master. I also like that, I don't know why they changed the title. Everybody, Drunken Master, the original, is a very famous film. People know it. Why not call it Drunken Master 2? And why change? Why did they delete the end credits sequence? If you have the original version, Jackie Chan sings the original end credits sequence song. They changed that too. So, as you can probably tell, I'm not a fan of the Weinsteins. He's the clowns that won't release uncut versions of anything, including the full uncut version of Kill Bill for whatever reason. But, hey, at least they exposed the world, to some really great actors and directors. I'll have to do a review of Rumble in the Bronx because that really was when all this broke. And at the time, I joined the Jackie Chan fan club. I was the 7th member of the U.S. Jackie Chan fan club. So this was before the movies came out. And when I finally saw that, Rumble in the Bronx was coming to a big screen, I was so happy that, Jackie was getting another chance because obviously the aborted chance of the 80s where they didn't understand. At least this time you're going to get his movies. And Rumble in the Bronx was okay in the version that came out in the U.S. It's massively cut. It is truly a butcher of that film. So again, that's another one I highly recommend you find the original version, especially if you're a fan of Anita and get to see all of her scenes put back in the movie and add a story to it. So obviously I'm giving Drunken Master 2 a huge double thumbs up. It's just a brilliant movie. And I wanted to kind of do a return to our video reviews with something really positive. So those of you who haven't seen it, definitely check it out. I think there's so much rich history to that film, and the acting, actors, the cast, that is just a perfect martial arts film in its own right, a particular type of genre. So I hope you enjoy the review. Again, let me know what you all want to hear. Any other series reviews, more broad spectrum reviews, maybe the fall of Hong Kong cinema, along with the fall of cinema in general over the past decade. And of course, like, subscribe, check out the other channels. You can always message on there. There's a Patreon now, so of course, always appreciated on that. And we'll see what we can do about more diverse content coming up. See you soon.